the size of this storm, it is wider than our entire state and could cause major and life-threatening impacts from coast to coast. Regardless of which coast you live on, be prepared to evacuate. Floridians on the West Coast cannot be complacent. Just because models show it moving close to the East Coast, the West Coast will still have hurricane conditions.
Governor Rick Scott right there monitoring the situation in Tallahassee as Hurricane Irma gets closer here to South Florida. That is this first half hour in the 8 o'clock hour. As we continue to track Irma, I'm Jeff Lennox.
I'm Lynn Martinez. We'll be right back. All right, a special continuing coverage now as we continue to watch Hurricane Irma. It's still a strong Category 5. All of South Florida is under a hurricane watch. It looks like the entire state of Florida will be affected by this very, very strong storm.
Okay, a really impressive image right there. You see that well-defined eye and the storms that just fan out from the center of that storm. Chief Meteorologist Phil Farrow in the Storm Center tracking Irma's every move. Phil?
Right, so we know that this is a major system, Category 5. There's very little out there to weaken it, and we know it is aiming for us. The question now is going to be, when is it going to get here? And it appears that it will be sometime over the weekend. 175-mile-per-hour winds, Category 5. If you're plodding along, 21.1, 71.8, and it is moving west-northwest at around 16 miles per hour. That forward speed has not changed that much. What also hasn't changed much is Irma itself. It looks the same today as it did 48 hours ago when it impacted and virtually leveled most of the islands of the northern Leeward Islands. So right now, that center of circulation there, the Turks and Caicos, they are getting hammered by very strong gusty winds and plenty of rain. Now, we have enhanced this satellite imagery. What we have done is we have given color to the highest cloud tops. And usually when you have really high cloud tops, that's where you have the strongest thunderstorms. Strong thunderstorms equal a lot of heavy rain. And we have that taking place right now, moving in this counterclockwise direction. A lot of strong gusty winds and a lot of rain is pounding parts of Haiti and the Dominican Republic. That means plenty of downpours leading to flooding that will lead to land and mudslides. This is going to be a terrible 12-15 hours for much of Hispaniola. The southeastern Bahamas also getting nailed. So we know that the main players pushing this thing in our direction will remain the same. The system is trying to look for this gap in the atmosphere, high pressure to the east and that front across the nation's midsection. Unfortunately, this front is diving south and it's going to stop the forward progress. The system is going to make a turn on a dime. And right now, most of the models have a really good handle on this, and they say that that turn will happen right across South Florida, will be impacted with a Category 4 system, borderline 5, impacting the rest of the state. And even as it moves in across the southeast, we could have a tropical storm over Kentucky and Tennessee. with 45-mile-per-hour winds come Tuesday. That could dump a lot of heavy rainfall there, and even they could see some catastrophic flooding as well. Here's the close-up cone. Here are the islands of the southeastern Bahamas, Hispaniola, eastern Cuba. The system will continue to track towards the northwest. Now, the issue here is that it's going to stay over some very warm waters. It's going to take this incredible route, the eye missing most of the land masses here. Central Cuba is going to get some gusty winds, heavy rain as well. Come Saturday and Sunday, there will be a Category 4 system sitting across the Florida Straits with 155-mile-per-hour winds. It's not going to weaken that much. This is a borderline Category 5 as well. Once the winds go up to 157, you have a Category 5. So really, these are just semantics. Huge, strong storm. It is going to move right over South Florida. The cone continues to shrink. The eye could be here. The eye could be here. The eye could be in the worst part of all, just plowing parts of Miami-Dade County and aiming for Lake Okeechobee. So everyone here in this area highlighted in red should be taking the system very seriously. Now, the reason why it's going to remain strong is because it has all the fuel it needs to stay as a major system. Look at these water temperatures, 88 degrees, 86 was here by the Keys, but this is only going to get warmer as the system moves in our general direction. Now, because we do have a hurricane coming, the National Hurricane Center, along with emergency managers, they have issued a hurricane watch that extends from Lake Okeechobee south into the Florida Keys. This is your turn now to do your part to prepare for this system. Now is the time to make sure that you protect your property, make sure you bring in all the potted plants, any kids' toys, whatever, because those turn out to be projectiles, and those are the things that can cause damage to windows down the road, and especially anything that could come into a window like a swing set. You got to make sure that all those things are tied down as much as possible. So make sure you do that. Make sure you have all the supplies that you need, food and water. If for some reason we do get hit with a major storm 4 or 5 and the stores aren't going to be available, there isn't going to be any cash or any gasoline, you got to make sure that you have your supplies to at least be on your own for a good 5 days. So please do your part right now as best you can, and we will get through this. Preparation is always key. Meanwhile, Hurricane Irma, just about 600 miles away from Florida, but those outer bands right here, they're about 340, 350 miles away. So we are on the on-deck circle here in a couple of days now. There is a recon plane out there. They just made their first pass. They went right through the southern end of the eye wall, detecting 160-mile-per-hour winds. The pressure continues to drop. They're going to be going here kind of almost in a figure-8 pattern for almost the next 3 or 4 hours, trying to get a really good idea of what is going on. And you're noticing that they're basically going to fly right around here. This is the strongest part of the storm, so they'll be up, they'll be going down. That's called an alpha pattern. That's what they will be doing. They'll take all that information, send it back to the Hurricane Center, and then they will use that to bring out the next official advisory as of 11 p.m. Now, as we move here closer to home, let's take a good close-up view as to when we're going to start to see those winds moving in across the area. And we're only going to focus here now just on tropical storm force winds. So it looks like by Saturday at 9:30 in the morning, already 40-plus mile-per-hour winds should start to move in from the Middle Keys through deep southern Miami-Dade County, Bimini, and as well as Andros Island. As we move further along, Saturday, 8 p.m., just about all of South Florida dealing with those 40-plus all the way up to 73-mile-per-hour winds across the area. And then check out Sunday here, because basically from Tampa all the way down in through Key West, we will be seeing at the very least tropical storm force winds to 74-mile-per-hour winds. Now, when we talk about those real dangerous winds of Category 4 or 5, they're usually right around that ring of destruction, and they extend out 70 miles from the center. If we got that straight line here, which we know we really don't go by, but if it were to take that route, it means that somewhere in this area we could see those catastrophic winds impacting South Florida. This is just a gauge. Remember, 340 miles wide, this system. This area of South Florida is about 100 miles wide. we are all going to be impacted one way or another, where it be rain, where it be wind, where it be storm surge all along the coast. Biscayne Bay, we're going to get that rush of water coming in here. It's going to fan out, it's going to come up, and on top of that, with the wind, not only do we get the surge, but then the high waves on top of that. And if it comes in at high tide, we could see 10, 15 plus feet of water impacting coastal communities. Hurricane warnings, everything in red here from northern edge of Hispaniola, all of the Bahamas, central Cuba. For us, we're under that hurricane watch, but that will change possibly as early as tonight or during the day tomorrow to a hurricane warning. Now for a detailed look as to what we can expect here across South Florida as far as impacts, I toss it over now to my colleague Brent Cameron with the very latest. Brent?
All right, thanks, Phil. We remain on high alert South Florida as the system gets a little closer right now, impacting the southeastern Bahamas. We have time. We have Friday, but that'll be the final day to make last-minute preparations during the day for this hurricane and the effects. Broward as we go into the weekend, Miami-Dade and the Keys. Want to start with talking about the wind potential. We're talking about peak winds in the range, Broward County, of 90 to 110 miles per hour or higher based on the current forecast. Possible gusts even above that could be around 140 miles per hour. That, of course, would be very dangerous and catastrophic type concerns as those wind speeds really tend to overwhelm the area. Miami-Dade, peak winds 115 to 135. These could go on for several hours as well. We're also looking at possible gusts upwards of 170 miles per hour. Not too much difference in the Keys. Peak winds above 110 as we prepare for what may be a Category 4. Can't rule out the potential of even a Category 5 system, as mentioned earlier. So this is what we look at in the rain. We go from wind to rain. This goes out until Monday, but the basic rain event would be from this hurricane throughout the course of the weekend. Could get a few isolated showers tomorrow, most of these Saturday, Sunday. We could be watching as the rain continues to rally in here, over a foot of it. That could lead to some flooding. We're already going to have that potential due to the storm surge, and we might see some advisories for the threat of some flooding by way of some flood watches, maybe some warnings as necessary. Right now, that is not the case. We'll continue to look on both coasts, potential for this storm surge that we've been talking so much about. This is very important to pay attention to. Now, this line here, notice this pink shaded area goes from the ocean. There's A1A, and there's Dixie Highway. Okay, there's I-95, Broward County. So this area shaded in pink here, this is what we expect in terms of the really dangerous storm surge and why a watch has been issued forecasting 5 to 8 feet storm surge above ground level for you in Broward County. We go from Broward to Miami-Dade for the forecast, and this is the peak storm surge potential for you. Coastal Miami-Dade, even higher, 7 to 10 feet above ground. So this is where that pink area is. There's Miami Beach. There's the ocean waters, the bay, crossing the causeways, well over to I-95. And then notice over here, there's Miami International Airport, kind of jets out just a little bit farther. So along US 41, still perhaps even more of a concern for the inundation of rain, and the waves could also add insult. The high tides that come in, we'll be watching for that potential. Into southern Miami-Dade, there is US 1, and once again from the bay waters, that push and pull of the waters coming in and overwhelming the area. Also that potential for 7 to 10 feet for you, the storm surge potential in the Keys. We continue to watch Irma, still a Category 5, now battering the Turks and Caicos. Obviously, you can see the well-defined center there. It's moving almost to the west-northwest. It has not slowed down, hasn't sped up either, moving at 16 miles per hour. And the effects of this, as Phil mentioned just a few moments ago, very much widespread. And you can see in these dark shades here the effects of hurricane force winds and also the destructive force of Irma extending out about 70 miles from the center. And of course, the real concern is that outer wall there of the hurricane. We will talk more coming up in just a few minutes. Back with you.
Thank you very much, Brennan. We set our sights now on Key West. They will see some of the effects of the storm as it moves in.
Yeah, and if you haven't left Key West by now, it might almost be too late. Let's go to 7's Nicole Ensalada, and that's where she's at right now. Nicole?
Well, they just had a press conference here at the City Hall here in Key West. It was the county administrator as well as officials with the city, with the police department, and that's really what they have been saying for the last several days, is they really want people to leave the Keys because they feel not only that it's unsafe to be here during the storm, but the aftermath, they fear, is going to put a lot of people at risk as well. Now, of course, getting out of here, though, would require gas. That has been a very big concern, not, of course, just here in Monroe, but across all of South Florida. And so we asked about that, about how they're trying to get more gas to the gas stations down here. Here's what they had to say.
I know that the governor has been pushing some fuel down. There was a couple with Florida Highway Patrol came down with them. That's the best we can do. I mean, there's some gas stations that are also closing because they're also evacuating their staff. So we have, I think, 4 or 5 is the last time I heard, and we're going to push that list out.
Stand on number 1 for this red car.
At the southernmost shell in Key West, the gas supply was dwindling, but everyone trying to keep a cool head.
Go around and go to number 1.
I'm a little frantic, probably 3 days ago, especially for the locals.
I've been here all my life. This is probably the worst storm that we've ever been hit with, but we'll make it through.
So thousands are gassing up, many leaving, some choosing to stick it out. But city and county officials had a blunt message Thursday morning.
The main message is leave now. We've got time. Over in those islands, they don't have 42 bridges connecting them to the mainland like we do. If some of those bridges go down, we will be disconnected from the mainland and our supplies. So you have no power, no water, and it'll be a very dangerous situation to be in. So please leave now while we have a chance.
Normally boisterous Duval Street, boarded up and fairly quiet. But some are choosing to stay. Raymond Bloodworth is going to try to keep the CVS store he manages open for as long as possible.
We've got a lot of people coming in. We're staying open for the locals to take care of the locals. People are picking up their last-minute things. A lot of the convenience stores have closed down, but we're staying open because we still have water. We're going to help do what we can for the local people because they need it, and we're proud to do that.
All the gas is out now.
Back at the southernmost shell, just before 5 o'clock, the gas ran out. The owner tried to get a truck out Friday, but no luck. And I asked the county administrator about the situation with the bridges that all lead to all the various keys and then eventually to Key West, because that seems to be a huge concern that if any of the bridges wash out or are damaged, if you decide not to leave, you're going to be stuck on one of these keys. And he said immediately after the storm passes, they will have to do inspections to see first visually and then perhaps then something more extensive just to make sure that those bridges are passable. So if you did evacuate, you will not be able to return home immediately. They want to make sure the roadways are safe. So we will just have to wait and see how long a process like that will take. Reporting live in Key West, Nicole Ensalada, 7 News.
Okay, Nicole, thank you. Important information from her. Apparently, we're getting some new information from Governor Scott.
Yeah, and this deals with closures throughout our region. Craig Stevens at the news desk with more on those closures. Craig?
This has to do, Lynn and Jeff, with the state's ability to open shelters, which are places of last resort for people who are forced to evacuate their homes. As we have told you, as you guys know, schools are a big part of that. Schools are generally used as shelters. So with that in mind, to make sure they have the capacity they need in South Florida and elsewhere, because other counties are also in the process of ordering evacuations, the governor has ordered public schools, and let me go through the list here from the governor, all K through 12 public schools, state colleges, state universities, and state offices. They're going to be closed Monday now. We've been telling you that in Miami-Dade and Broward they closed school Thursday and Friday. Now the governor's office has asked that be extended to include Monday as well. The thinking being, again, many of these are used as shelters, and if the height of the storm hits whatever fashion it is on Sunday, people who are in shelters will be there Sunday night, and they might need another day or so. So that's the word from the governor, that public schools will not be open Monday. Probably not much as a surprise, even if they weren't being used as shelters. Local officials, while whatever assessments are going on after the storm clears, probably wouldn't want to roll buses and have school buildings open on Monday. But in this case, as we learned from the governor's office, now they will not be. That's it from here. We'll have a lot more with Jeff and Lynn, and our coverage will continue right after this.
Welcome back to continuous coverage, keeping our eyes on Hurricane Irma. We are under hurricane watch, and Irma is still a Category 5. We've got some new information regarding the University of Miami. 7's Craig Stevens has that at the news desk. Craig?
The University of Miami canceled classes, as we told you. They canceled classes Wednesday, yesterday, for today. Today is Thursday, yes? It's Thursday, and then for tomorrow. So the university's been closed 3 days this week. A lot of students there, and I know this as an adjunct faculty member there, a lot of the students who attend UM left. Their parents came for them or had them flown out. There is a small number of students left on the Gables campus, about 137 students, according to the U, who are still on campus, but with the likelihood of issues associated with the storm, that small number will be evacuated. They made the decision that they will send them to an off-campus shelter over the course of the day tomorrow. So again, most of the campus is pretty much emptied out, but that small number of students who did remain there, about 137 or so who are still on campus, will be evacuated over the course of the day tomorrow to a Red Cross shelter here in Miami-Dade County. This is, they tell us, the first time the university will be fully evacuated for a hurricane, incidentally. That's the story from the news desk. Craig Stevens, 7 News.
Wow, so U of M taking this very seriously for a little over 100 students. Okay, thank you, Craig. And a reminder, we probably more than likely are going to lose power at some point and electricity. You can still stay with us. You can still hear us simulcast with these radio stations starting sometime tomorrow. Check it out. We'll have more on this when we come back.
Okay, as Hurricane Irma continues to churn out there, we are getting these images in from Antigua. Again, as the storm moves on closer to our direction, a lot of new images coming in showing you the devastation left in her wake. This is, again, Antigua right here. A couple of deaths in this region, but you can just see how catastrophic the damage is there to homes and businesses in the Caribbean islands. Again, a lot of that new video coming in here to the satellite center here in the Plex. So again, right now that storm is bearing down in the Turks and Caicos, again making its way on north of Cuba and then into our region. And here are some of the look at the damage that we've seen thus far.
From a rooftop in St. Martin, the desperate pleas for help are coming.
That's why we're live today, because we need help.
The island nation took a direct hit from Irma's eye early on Wednesday.
It's estimated that at least 95% of the whole island is destroyed.
Nowhere to live, no running water, no sewer, and limited food. Those who survived the storm have a simple message.
We need thousands of people. The damage, they don't need to make a damage assessment. Just send everything you have.
In St. Barts and St. Thomas, many homes were also destroyed.
Oh my goodness!
At this hour, Irma is battering the Turks and Caicos Islands. Some shelters have already lost windows. And earlier in Haiti, Irma's heavy rains forced evacuations. And even though this Category 5 hurricane stayed offshore the Dominican Republic, the 180-mile-per-hour winds tore down beachfront properties.
No, Cabarete has been completely destroyed. The beach, the restaurants have been affected. The bars, everything has been destroyed.
Cleanup is starting in Puerto Rico, where more than 1 million people are without power. Even though Irma stayed just offshore overnight, she left plenty of damage in her wake.
We're trying to take out the branches that have fallen on the cables. The problem is the tree fell on the road.
But this may be just the beginning for people who live on the Caribbean islands. Check out this view from space. That's Irma with Hurricane Jose coming right behind her and headed toward these same islands.
Expected to be a major hurricane at some point. Now, Irma's death toll stands at least 13, with hundreds more injured. Those numbers are expected to rise as it makes its way past Haiti, which is prone to flash flooding. Lynn, back to you.
Wow, those are some pretty shocking pictures, Jeff. Thank you. The good news is, I'm trying to give you some good news, FP&L is already making preparations in case, well, we assume the power is going to be out. Electricity, of course, is a big concern during and after the storm. FP&L says that they're doing their best to prepare for Irma. They're on standby, and Brian Enton has more on that.
Florida Power and Light says they have 11,000 crews on standby and more on the way. They've spent billions over the last few years getting ready for a hurricane like Irma, but they still don't know exactly how their system will fare.
Now, the great unknown is, again, the intensity and the path of the storm and the damage that it could potentially do to the rest of the system, the poles, the wires, the equipment, the substations like this.
FPL learning from the past to prepare for Irma's threat. In 2005, Hurricane Wilma knocked out power to a record 3.2 million FPL customers. Since then, FPL has installed concrete power poles that can withstand Category 5 winds, and their substations are flood ready with new sensors and raised equipment.
This is important because what it does, it provides us with real-time information, sends it remotely to our control centers, and when we see those water levels rising, we can effectively shut down this substation, thereby preventing damage.
FPL says they will shut down nuclear plants like Turkey Point ahead of a strong hurricane like Irma. They say other plants on the grid will provide enough power unless those are damaged. Bottom line, they say they're more ready than ever, but it's unclear exactly what Irma will bring.
If a major storm hits like a Category 4, Category 5, frankly, we are urging our customers to prepare for extended outages, and we anticipate that we may have to not only repair, but completely rebuild parts of our system.
So again, FPL says they have 11,000 crews right now ready to go to start repairing damaged power lines and systems after the storm, and they say there are thousands of more crews from other states on standby waiting to help if called. In Fort Lauderdale, Brian Enton, 7 News.
And you and I, we've been through a number of these storms. You know, as they're moving on through, if you get ahead of the storm, you see those trucks lined up on highways. They're waiting in other states. Those utility crews getting ready to come in. So those guys.
It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, and they're working around the clock to make sure that we stay safe and with power.
Not having any power stinks. Remember that from Wilma, not having it for 2 weeks. And I don't remember Andrew. That's a one I don't want to remember. Okay, so let's get the latest on Hurricane Irma with meteorologist Phil Farrow, who's in the Weather Center. Phil?
You know, as you guys were talking there about the impacts after Wilma and how long we were without power, this is potentially one of the strongest systems that we have ever seen here across South Florida. The acting director there at the National Hurricane Center earlier today said that this could be one of the most significant impacts here since Andrew. So we have to take this very, very seriously. I wish that it could fall apart, but it doesn't seem like there's anything out there to stop it, slow it down, or even deviate it. We're in a hurricane watch. Irma still Category 5 near South Florida by Saturday. We have a little time here to prepare, make sure that our properties are ready, make sure that we have our supplies to be on our own in worst case scenario for about 5 days. This system, incredible. It's looked like this for almost 48 hours with very little weakening. Feeder bands continue to take a lot of that heat energy found in the ocean and feeding that tropical engine, the eye wall right now where you find those 175-mile-per-hour winds. It's impacted the Turks and Caicos, now heading for the southeastern Bahamas. Still plenty of rain making its way across Hispaniola. That'll lead to the flooding. The flooding leads to the land and mudslides. That is going to be awful for them. So here is the forecast cone. We know for sure that it is aiming for South Florida. It's going to get here as a Category 4, possibly borderline Category 5. You can see that the cone continues to narrow. Once it makes landfall, it is expected to stay strong as it reaches possibly Jacksonville, and then hopefully it starts to weaken until it reaches maybe Kentucky and Tennessee as a tropical storm by Tuesday afternoon. Still 45-mile-per-hour winds there. So this is the official forecast cone. It will continue to track right here, staying right over open waters, soaking up all that hot water. And then by the weekend, it is going to be very, very close here to South Florida. The timing ultimately will depend on how fast or slow Irma moves in our direction. So Saturday, somewhere here around 2 p.m., 155-mile-per-hour winds, 157, and it's Category 5. Then that center of circulation anywhere here in this area highlighted in red by Sunday at 2 p.m. Maybe the winds could come down a little to maybe 130 miles per hour. And everyone here should be ready to meet this system head on. This is a huge storm, pretty wide, over 350 miles wide. We're pretty narrow, 100 miles wide. So wherever it sets up, everyone is going to be impacted with wind, rain, and a very dangerous storm surge over many areas. We are under a hurricane watch. That means that in 48 hours, we are going to feel some hurricane force winds. We have another good day tomorrow, so take the time to prepare. Make sure your property is secure, your boats, make sure your cars, if you're going to park them, try to make sure that in a garage preferably. If not, park your cars as close to the house as you can. Give them at least one wall of protection. That'll help you if you can't find a garage to park. As far as Irma is concerned, there it is. Huge system. It is over 600 miles away, but those outer feeder bands are already about 350 miles away. And here is, you see the clear skies? That's the proverbial calm before the storm. All that dry air is headed in our direction, and it should arrive here tomorrow. All right, so there's a recon plane in there, 160-mile-per-hour winds on the south side. The pressure is still on the low side. If it continues to drop, it'll continue to get stronger. So here are the advisories that we are looking at for the moment. Everything right across Hispaniola is still looking at a tropical storm warning. Before I get to the warnings, I really want to show you this. I had forgotten about it. This is what we can expect as far as winds are concerned by Saturday morning. Tropical storm force winds, that's all that we're focusing on here right now. Tropical storm force winds will start to move in sometime at 10 a.m. Moving then by Saturday night. Freeport, Bimini, Broward, Miami-Dade, the Keys already under the tropical storm force winds, 40 miles per hour or above. Hurricane storm force winds will probably be right here. And then by Sunday, everybody is getting something. This is a very large system impacting a small area like South Florida. Here are the warnings. The northern side of Hispaniola, all of the Bahamas, central Cuba. Our hurricane watch for sure will become a hurricane warning during the day tomorrow. We have team coverage as far as what our local impacts might be. We go to my colleague now, Brent Cameron, for the very latest on that. Brent.
Thanks, Phil. And you mentioned the calm before the storm. Just checking current conditions, South Florida. Miami, our wind right now, it's just 6 miles per hour. Think of the wind potential well over 100 miles per hour. That could be the case in just a couple of nights. Let's talk about it, beginning with Friday finals tomorrow. Last preparations need to be completed. Last evacuations just have to be finished. And by the way, the seas should begin to build very late in the day tomorrow, probably Friday night. Heading into Saturday, Sunday, that's when it gets progressively worse. Rapidly deteriorating conditions as this category 5 right now, but a 4 or a 5 approaches and does arrive somewhere near South Florida and the region. We just need to watch the exact track. And as Phil just mentioned, it's such a large, impactful system that we are going to be affected by this just about no matter where it goes at this point. We just have to monitor the threat levels, and we're giving you as much information at this point as we can based on a lot of data. Here is the level of threat. Now, I've broken this down into 4 categories. First, the storm surge, and that is